Okay, welcome to another episode of Panakal podcast for Geeks, a show about good friends hanging out, talking about the things we all love. My guest today is Brian Colin of Curations. He's down there. And my co-host is Briana. I don't actually know where you guys appear on the actual call. This is just what I see on Streamlabs. So I'm hoping I see the same thing live. How are you guys doing today?
Good. I'm doing awesome. How are you doing?
Tired. We had a long weekend. I'm still recovering from last weekend, actually. So,
last weekend was pretty busy.
Last weekend, actually. So,
were you both there?
Yeah. So
I drove from Georgia up to Chicago, spent the night at Allen's house, and then we finished the hour and a half to Wisconsin on Friday, and then Sunday I dropped him off, and then kept going all the way back down to Georgia at that point. So it was a lot of driving for 2 days of playing games and running games.
For Gary Con, right?
Yeah, Gary Con. Like neither of us. Oh yeah, that's right. We probably didn't tell us what we were at. We were at a show called Gary Con. Yes. That's why Briana is here, man. She's keeping us on point.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Let me just make sure that Andrew knows. So Andrew couldn't join us today. Unfortunately, Andrew had some surgery done, so he's recovering. Which I'd rather he recover and not die on me. But yeah, so Brian and I went to GaryCon because, it's one of those shows. It's only like an hour and a half from my house. It was like an hour and a half, 2 hours away. But it's one of those shows where our mindset in the last couple of years has always been if we can't sell at a show or work the show, don't go to the show because it's we don't have the time for that, right?
Right. Who has time for vacation or recreational type activities when you're spending all your time working or on the road? For other things.
In this case, I posted a link. I'm jumping all over the place. I'm going off my actual notes.
Cool.
Brian and I are both working on RPGs. We both have ideas for games. So in our heads, we were let's just show up and market ourselves basically. And I think we did a good job. We talked a lot. Bree, you like this? We talked to the guy who I believe he created D&D 5e.
Oh, really?
But we didn't know that at the time.
What's his name?
Everybody
runs into him.
We were just at a bar afterwards on Sunday.
Mike Merles?
Sorry, no,
Matt Merles. It was the last night, Saturday night.
Yeah, and we were just at the bar. We had run into some other friends, some people that we knew.
Yeah. Well, we were basically at dinner with some friends. One of my really good friends, Daryl Andrews, invited us to a dinner. Daryl's actually probably going to be working on the Ancient Ones board game. Shout out to Daryl. And he invited us to dinner, and then afterwards, Brian and I were we're going to leave early and drive home, and he had to drive all the way back to Georgia, so we were we should just go back to the Airbnb and relax. But as we're walking through the parking lot, Brian's it's our last night, we should go to the bar, and I'm just you're driving, man.
Yeah, I mean,
I'm just along for this
hours.
Ride. So we ended up at Yeah. Well, you were let's just do it because you drove a long time and who knows when we'll be back, right? And we end up at this bar with a bunch of cool dudes just hanging out. And then this guy introduces
a lot of the Epic Levels crew, who I know some of them from before and talking to them. And then
I don't know the first guy we met. Don't name him, though, because I'm going to call him out. We walk in there. This dude's talking to Brian and me. He says, I gave away all my business cards. I don't have any because I was giving my business cards out left and right. So he's I don't have any business cards left. I'm sorry. I gave away all my business cards. And I'm okay. And then Brian starts pitching his stuff to this guy. And this guy's oh, hang on. Reaches into his wallet. Pulls out a fucking business card.
Well, he actually, he knew what Vast Grim was, which was awesome.
Right.
So when he saw that, and he does a lot of robot work, and since Vast Grim's a sci-fi horror thing, he was wait, hang on. I think I have one business card left.
Yeah. So, and I was this close to calling him out, but then I was don't call him out because Brian's talking to this dude and actually working an angle here. But I want to be oh, you found that card pretty fast. For me, it was oh, I'm totally out of business cards. But let's talk a little bit. I want to backtrack now, so I'm going to get back to my notes. I was going to talk a little about how Brian's been on the show a bunch of times. He's been on, I want to say you've been on the show at least 3 or 4 times. So we usually talk about whatever subject it is. It's I think one time it's for Marvel and one time it's for comic books. But, Brian and I actually met. I actually met Brian at Gen Con for the first time, but I didn't really become friends with Brian until Spectrum. It was my first year at Spectrum.
Mm-hmm.
I think it was your first time too.
It was my first year. And honestly, that was my first Gen Con. So it was and it was only probably a few months between.
Okay, because we did Gen Con, and then a couple months went by, and we were at Spectrum.
Right,
and
because you were roommates with David,
right,
at Spectrum already.
So David is our mutual friend who I met. David I met years back before that at LuxCon. And David, if you guys don't know David, he actually owns Infinite Black, and he's one of the creators of the Elder Dice sets, right? I want to get David on the show one day because I love David's story. On a side note, because I remember when he was first pitching the dice thing to me at LuxCon. This is the first time I'm meeting David. He's just sitting in this. We're all at this room party and just sitting there like on a Cintiq, and I'm like, dude, you're at a party. What are you doing? You know? And he's like, not even drawing on it. He's just staring at it. You know, like. So clearly the man does not want to be bothered, you know. And we start talking, we become friends, and he tells me about this idea to kickstart dice, and I'm like, I don't know shit about dice, so I'm just like, okay, you know, dice, really, you know. And as we all, if anyone who knows Elder Dice knows that shit took off. Like I watched that thing skyrocket. So, but yeah, so David tells me
it's done so well that now I'm a full-time employee of Infinite Black.
You're a VP of development? Is that correct?
Of tabletop RPG development.
Got it. That's his full title. But yeah, so Brian and David pull up in this van that stinks of glue. Like, it's literally a Scooby-Doo mobile, right? It just pulls up.
Well,
he opens the door, and I'm like, holy crap. You know, like, it just hits you right away. And apparently Brian built his own pro panels.
And I just built them, like, the week before. And so pro panels are, like... they're basically carpet on top of foam with like metal conduit on either side. So it hadn't aired enough to let the stink out of the carpet glue. And so like I just got to know David over 11 hours driving there as we're just inhaling the fumes from these pro panels with like windows down so we're not getting all messed up driving all the way from the southeast all the way to Kansas City.
Yeah, you guys, I mean, they pull up, and I'm, like, super excited to see David, because David and I are really good friends, and it's just like, holy crap. And David's like, he's like, I've been smelling this for the last, 10 hours. And I'm like, you guys gotta be high as fuck.
Yeah,
you know, like.
There's a lot of brain cells you're never going to get back after this trip.
I didn't even think about that. Yeah, that explains it. You fried a lot. I mean, on top of all the boozing we did, but, I just remember, like, so that's, you know, and so we were all roommates at this show, and I got to know Brian really well, and I remember when he was doing you had a Kickstarter you had done before that for, I think it was for Sculpts, I forget what it was, but I remember a bunch of the artist friends in my group were all like, check this dude out, he's making Sculpts, and he's selling them on Kickstarter. It was like something we haven't seen anyone try.
That was during the Make 100 thing. It was like the first year Kickstarter did Make 100, and I actually have one of them hanging over here. So I made the original Sculpt, and it's got cat hair all over it. And then I made a silicone mold, and I cast them out of resin and hand cut all the plaques. And so I kickstarted that.
That's awesome.
I don't remember if I got the dragon sculpt and this owl, which you guys can barely see. It's around the corner there. Like, did I get those from you at Spectrum? Or I think I got those from your Origins, maybe.
I think they were at different shows. Yeah. But the dragon one's a resin cast. The owl's a one of a kind piece.
Yeah, I got a one of a kind here. I mean, I can walk over there and get it. Hang on.
But it was crazy because I meeting Allen and David for the first time at Spectrum and quickly becoming instant friends with both of them.
I mean, it's got some weight to it too. Brian does not build light, so
no. Make it heavy. Make it count.
I've talked to Brian for years about building lighter, and he just keeps building heavy. So that's fine.
Weight makes it more luxurious. They've done studies.
It's
if
a good
it's
way.
Weighty, people feel like it's solid and it's quality. So
it's more money that they can spend on it. That's like
yes, exactly.
Yes, right. So heavier, more value.
Well, let's put it this way: at that Spectrum, I was. You know, it was one of those shows. It was one of the few shows where I was just like, I didn't really sell a lot, and I was just like, no, okay, whatever. I guess on network. Brian, however, was killing it. Like everybody was talking about him, even if he didn't realize it. People were just like, this dude, the sculptor over here is just selling everything, and I'm just like, they're good sculpts. You know, like people want
it was stuff that people hadn't seen.
People hadn't seen it. It was original work. Yeah. You know, it's one of a kind. All your stuff's you know they're like handmade, one of a kind. It's not it's not like a factory printing off multiple versions of it. So I think that's important in your line.
And also, like, none of the creatures were existing like mythology or D&D creatures. They were all stuff out of my imagination. So I think that added to it as well.
I'm gonna assume my audio's okay because Andrew has left the room. I don't know where he is.
He's like, I'm out.
So anyone watching, if you can't hear me, please tell me. So I mean, you and I, Brian and I became friends for a number of years, and then I remember like we were trying to work on. So I want to talk about Vast Grim, which is what you ran 2 games of Vast Grim at GaryCon. I sat in on one. I've sat in on an online campaign with him, but it was kind of fun to sit in a live play, like in person with a group of people who all liked that. They all knew the product. They loved the product. That one dude that was sitting in there doing that crazy voice. Yep. So this guy sits in and does this crazy voice of this like what was this? He was like a monk. I can't remember what class he was.
So
a devout, right?
One of the devout, okay. Yes.
He's doing this crazy voice the whole time. And the whole time I'm sitting there thinking, man, this guy's got a cool voice for his character. And later, as I was talking to him in the bar, I realized that's his real voice.
That's awesome.
That's how he fucking talks. And I was just like,
so that
it was cool, and but Vast Grim is also, that was the first time we were able to actually work together because you were able to use some of my art work and art style within the product. Dave and I, we both worked with you, which I thought was awesome, and that made GaryCon fun for me, like I was able to sit down and play games with my friends, basically.
Yeah, that was awesome.
Can you talk a little bit about like Vast Grim, if anybody like has heard
absolutely.
of it or gotten the chance to play it, like a little background?
Totally. So Vast Grim is a sci-fi horror RPG that's built off of Merkborg. Merkborg is like a cult fan favorite of RPGs. It won an NE, I think, in 2019. Yep. Pele and Johan, who made the game, created a open license so anybody can build off of what they've created. And so the first time I played it, the book is designed so well, the art's so stunning and so much different than other RPG content that I had been so inundated with for years that it like set something off in my brain to make me want to sculpt, which I hadn't done at all during the pandemic. So
that's awesome.
It inspired me to do this big nasty warhound thing that wasn't like my other sculptures. I did more like I wanted to just include black, white, and one additional color, as opposed to the more vibrant things that I had been sculpting before. And when I made it, I was like, I need to turn this into, like, all of my creatures, they all have a story, and they're all part of a universe as I build things out. So I wanted to create something completely different and do something sci-fi, because I was tired of the high fantasy stuff that I'd been playing and writing at that point. So I reached out to my friend Ross, who ran the Merkborg game for us. It's like, hey, Ross, I want to build a sci-fi game around this. Do you want to help? And so I wrote about 75% of Vast Grim. He wrote like 25%, and we shared about the same percentage weight in actually doing the layout and design. And this RPG is the very first one to crowdfund on Gamefound. Infinite Black published it, and I got to work on it a whole lot. Like after I got hired on at Infinite Black, I got to work on it a lot during the day. Got to write, do layout design, do sculpting and art, grab Alan's art, grab David's art, mash it all together. And it's currently in production right now, but we have PDFs out to people, so there's lots of folks that are already playing it. We've had our very first self-published third-party adventure that Gaffy did, which so we have the same third-party license. Anybody can write content for it and make money off of it. There's also already fan fiction being written and published out there where somebody's taking the adventures that she's running and rewriting it in a narrative form. And the physical copies haven't come out yet, so it's awesome to see people embrace the weird, like very gonzo sci-fi thing that we're working on and put it into their own put their own spins on it.
I think gonzo is a good word to describe it, because one of the things I really loved about Vast Grim was, we all play D&D, and there's like, you all know that like play it safe player, and then you have that like murder hobo player, right? Who's just like, I'm gonna do everything chaotic. And usually people hate you for that, right? They're like, oh, dude, you're fucking up. You're going to screw up this whole campaign. In Vast Grim, that's encouraged. Like, you want to be the craziest guy in there. Like, we played this game last week. There's one dude his friend, mind you, was checking a part of the ship out, and his other friend, this guy, jettisoned him out into space. And I was just like, what the... Literally, he was like, I'm going to press this button. And this other guy in the game went, I dare you. And he went, okay.
And then part of the jail
and the jail ship just took off. And I'm like, that guy was part of our team. and like, I was just like, at first I was like, that's like pushing somebody off a cliff in the middle of the game. But like that game, it's like, I love the aspect of like, let's see if I can be the next craziest person in the game, right? Like
part of it's the universe is ending, and so like
right.
everything's coming to a head. So you're either going to survive or you're not. And if somebody else is keeping you from surviving, you're going to push them out of the airlock. You're going to try and survive.
Yeah, I mean that guy was being a little sketchy, but I wasn't thinking about pushing him out of the airlock. I was definitely thinking about killing everybody in the ship with me at some point. It didn't get to that. Because my guy had that crazy ability to control the Grim, and I was like, let's do this. But, I think you did, Brian's done a good job. I follow the thing on Gamefound. Gamefound, the first time I ever even heard about Gamefound was the Hellboy RPG was on there, but they didn't, crowdfund it. It was just made there and sold there,
No. So Gamefound started out as a pledge manager. So the folks at Awaken Realms who have had $1 million, multi-million-dollar successful Kickstarters created a platform where they could have their own pledge manager versus doing BackerKit, pledge manager,
right?
Any of the other ones. So it had 4 years of pledge manager success before they went into creating a before launching a beta of the crowdfunding platform. So it already had a base of there were.
So that's why Hellboy is sitting on Gamefound, but it was on Kickstarter, if I remember.
Right. Okay. So it had there was already an audience of board game people there. Around 400,000 people when Vast Grim launched. And so since then, Vast Grim was the first RPG. Down We Go was a successful launch on Gamefound, another RPG. Cyber Metal was another successful one. And then my current book, Crawling Death Below the Dying Forest, is the next successful RPG. And it launched while Gamefound was in beta for crowdfunding, but 2 days ago they opened up, and it's open to anybody to crowdfund on there now. But Crawling Death has got a week left. It's a Merc board
I dropped
adventure.
The link in the chat, so anyone wants to go check it out, and I'll drop the link in the bottom of this video once we're done, just so everybody can find
Excellent.
it.
Good.
I mean, I've seen it. It's beautiful. You sent me a review from, I can't remember the guy's name the other night. He did an awesome.
Oh, Tony Vicinda from Plus One EXP. He always does such a great job of reviews.
Sounds like a voice actor.
Well, so he had me run a game on his channel.
Okay.
And it was him, Dave from Nerdarchy, Johan, who's one of the creators of Merkborg, played, and then Malakissa played, who is in the Infinite Black Discord, and she's also one of my Patreon supporters. So we all got to play. So what he was kind of telling the story of immersing himself in it, because he really gets into that narrative immersion. All that stuff was stuff from our game that he played in.
Okay.
Before then explaining it. So yeah.
I was like, wow, this guy wrote a whole story for this. I mean, it's kind of cool. You got one of the creators to play with you. That's kind of nice.
Tony did that. That was very awesome.
Yeah, the other thing Brian was doing that I noticed that you were doing when we were playing live, which I would never do because it would be I'd be too wrecked to do it, was Brian was creating the campaign on the fly to a certain degree. Yeah. He was rolling dice, writing some stuff down, but to a certain degree, he was running it just I was like, this dude's just making this shit up as he goes along, which is
I had each of the players roll a specific die.
I saw what you did. I have a bunch.
In Vast Grim, there's charts in the back of the book for adventure sparks and things like that.
Yep.
So I had each of the players roll stuff, and then I wrote those down on an index card, and that's what the adventure was. So I kind of built it as we went, and based off of what people rolled.
We also,
but
go ahead. I'm sorry.
Oh, I've GM'd for years and years and years and years, so that's how I like to do it because it keeps it fresh for me. If I'm not just playing, this is the exact structure thing.
I'm still learning how to DM stuff in D&D, and I have to have I think in our campaign that Bree and I play in, we're the only two sitting there taking notes half the time. Because I think both of us need that visual information, right? Of what's going on, what happened. Because there's many times where people be like, "Hey, what's going on here?" And both of us are going through our books, this is what we talked about.
Yep.
You know, and I forgot what I was going to say about that, but I also wanted to talk about while we were there. The other thing that I think that Brian did, which was really good, we tested other. What are they called? Rules? What do you call like motherships?
Right. We played other games. So yeah, like I'd never read or played Mothership, which was a huge sci-fi hit that has a great following. I think they launched probably like 3.5 years ago. But then this year, just a couple months ago, they closed out a Kickstarter with like $1.4 million. It's
a lot.
And they started out as just ash cans of sci-fi horror. And over 3 years, they built a huge audience.
And we discussed building My Ancient Ones RPG in this set of rules until I played it.
Right. And so you've got to find like, for me, if you're going to run a game, if you're going to make a game, make something that you want to run.
Right.
Which is like exactly. When I did my World of Revelo stuff, I was originally going to do it in Fate because I really enjoy Fate. But my son was at an age where he really wanted all the crunch that's in D&D and flipping through like Kobold Press bestiaries and things like that. So I did it in 5e. But then like that's why like Crawling Death and why Vatsgrim is all in Merkborg, because that's what I want to run. So if you're doing it for anybody, you should do it for you first. And then you'll find your audience, you know? And we played Mothership, and it's cool. I love the character sheet. I love the flowchart of the character sheet. But something about the mechanics were not quite for me. It was a little too...
I was getting frustrated with the mechanics,
Yeah.
I didn't like the fact that it only used D10s.
Right. I want all the funny shaped dice, right?
Right. I want all the dice.
All those clickety clacks.
Also, the guy kept making me run... because the rules have you running the D10s, and then you also have to do the percentage dice. Percentage off the D10s. And Brian saw me struggle busting through this, because I was just like, wait... What percentage?
Which dice first?
Yeah, which dice first? And he's like, the higher one first, man, every time. And I just kept like spacing on it every time. And I wasn't like drunk or anything. I was not having a good time. But I was like, I want to learn this set just because I really wanted to know if I would use it in Ancient Ones or not. Like, Morkborg is fun. I would probably consider that one for Ancient Ones. It's a little too chaotic for me, but I liked it. Right. We looked at Lumen, which only uses D6, I think. And I was like, no, thank you. Same thing with Fate, to a degree. Fate has got the D6 dice with a plus or minus. And then Mothership, I thought was hopeful. It looked, I paid for the source, what do you call it? SRD?
The SRD, yep.
And it looked cool. And maybe we just had a DM who's a little too serious or not serious enough, you know? But like all the dice didn't come into play till like the last like 40 minutes. Like, you know, like, let me put it this way, Briana, like when you play D&D and, you know, we're like, I'm going to look to see if XYZ or something. And the DM would usually say roll perception or an investigation. There's nothing like that. They're just like, here's what you see.
Was it just like theater of the mind for like most of the game?
So I think most of it is also, unless it's something very challenging, it's more narrative play. Like you're trying, like most of it can be explained like, okay, well, if you spend 10 minutes looking over the room, you're going to find this, this, and this, versus like, let's hurry up and roll and see what we get. Yeah. And that's totally dependent on like the group's style of play as well. I think depending on the GM, that could be run slightly differently. A system you might want to check out for yours, Alan, might be Savage Worlds as well.
Oh yeah, you mentioned that one. I think I might.
I like Savage Worlds. I've never played it, but I have it. I've read a bunch of it. I really like it. Like I started converting Revelo to some of it at one point, just because I really like the system.
I gotta write that down.
But then it also has more crunch. Like the older I get, the less rules I want, and the more I want to be able to just like wing it on the fly and have it be more immersive as far as the like the weird like.
I don't know. I still like, you know, I play D&D and I still like I like the randomness. Like, think about how many times I was trying to do stealth in our game last time, Briana, and I kept rolling like 3s. I'm like, I'm the worst kind of fucking halfling.
I mean, I guess there's pros and cons to that, because like as a player, you kind of get to participate a little bit more, and then depending on like the DM's storytelling style, that could be like more or less engaging. But the downside is if you roll bad, then like you don't get to do anything like your stealth rolls this week.
Yeah, I tried rolling stealth about 4 times in the last game, and I failed every single one of them.
I see you.
Still see you. Are you like? It was like I was walking with a limp or something, and I was just like, "What the fuck is happening here?" And I was like really annoyed with. And that's the. I also like being able to actually physically roll dice, and we play with Roll20 with D&D Beyond, so you get that digital number where I'm like, sometimes it's the RNG is ungrateful, So I kind of liked. That's the one thing I did like about playing the games with Brian last week was we had to physically roll dice and be like, "Yep, I just rolled that poorly,"
Plus, it was just fun to be around a table again because it's been so long since I've done that.
And everybody was chill. We're still dealing with this pandemic stuff, and everybody at our table was like, "We'll keep our masks on if you guys want to keep your masks on." By the way, Brian and I both tested negative, so we're good to go.
Hey, congrats!
But
thanks.
I was feeling a little out of it early in the week. And I'm like, "Oh God," But I did, one thing I did, Brian, when you were running, Brian ran a game on Saturday that had so many people in it, and I ducked out because I was like, "You got too many people," and he was just like, "Do you mind not playing?" And I said, "Yeah, that's fine." What I did do is walked around. The other room had, the one room had like this, what's it called? Like a live dungeon crawl, basically.
Yep.
Briana, have you been to Gen Con ever?
I haven't, but I think I know what you're talking about like the...
It's like a live action dungeon crawl, right? They build the whole room out to look like a dungeon. So one room next to us had a mini version of that. And the guy was cool. He gave me a little tour of it. But the first room, we were in the middle room. The first room had old school, like this guy playing 2nd edition. And I just watched just to be like, I'm curious. I've never seen 2nd edition being played. I started on 3.5 or 3. So I was like, let me just check it out. This dude really did not like me because when I said I play 5e, he was like, I felt like I insulted him a little bit. But I was like, all right, whatever, man. He was like, 5e is for babies. What's wrong with you?
Yeah, there's a weird elitist thing about like 5e versus people who've started on like the older original.
Yep.
Like, I'm sorry, you had to roll wooden dice when you started, dude.
and a lot of GaryCon is people playing older versions of D&D, or they're playing clones, like different dungeon crawl classics or old school essentials, where it's like taking some of those old rules and using those with newer content.
Which I think I slowly figured out as like at one point Brian and I were having we had to always find areas to sit where we can eat without being around people because we were super cautious because we have kids at home, and we were sitting at that one table on the outside of the main vendor area,
2nd level.
And this one dude was running his campaign that had like 10 people in it, and he was like super serious. Remember, he was just listening to him talk. I was just like this, and he was very like chill but serious, like if that makes sense, the way he was running.
So I saw that.
Scary. That
was like the 10th year in a row that they've been up there. I saw that on Twitter this week, and it's so like every year that's where they recorded. So that's awesome that they can get a group together year after year. And it said if there's a seat at the table, anybody's welcome to come and jump in.
Oh, really? So I didn't know that.
Yeah, it's awesome to see that like a game continues like that at a show. Because
then you got like us who can't even get like a weekly game going half the time. That's like the easiest thing. We're all online. I also I'm gonna move away from GaryCon for a second because I also want to talk about one of the things I really like adore and respect about Brian is the fact that this dude's like an idea. Don't let it go to your head. He is like an idea machine. Like, so I listed off all these other things. He's got Vast Grim, which is what you guys know, and he's got a current thing on Gamefound, but he's done World of Revelo. You got the RPG Squeeze. You have Pins and Patches, which are all over the place. And he's got his Pins and Patches in Madness Comics, which is one of my all-time favorite comics in Plano, Texas. I'm super fucking jealous that his stuff's in there and mine's not. Like, dude, I know the damn owner and my stuff's not there. Cartography, and now you work with Infinite Black, which is awesome. But like, there's been times where like I come up with a thing that I want to do, and I'll be like, I kind of want this idea, and Brian will make a mild suggestion, like, why don't you try this? And it's just like,
and it just
holy shit,
bumps it up a little bit.
It bumps it up a little bit. Like, everyone knows I have Ancient Ones, and I wanted to do a kids line in Ancient Ones. And the original way I was going to do was make a whole separate fantasy series for kids. because I was reading like ABCs of D&D and ABCs of 1, 2, 3s of D&D for my kid. And I thought, I want to make this kids line, board books, kids books, plushies, because Brian's got plushies. I thought they looked great. And then Brian said, why are you doing it that way? Why don't you put it in the Ancient Ones world? And I'm like, what? And then that simple statement made me start thinking about it a little more. And the more him and I talked, I was like, oh, okay, I got it. We'll put these kids, they live on this planet within the Ancient Ones world, and they're talking about adventures the main characters go on. And it just kind of really worked its way out. But it's like a simple thing that my brain wasn't processing. And that's happened a bunch of times.
Yep.
Over the years. But like, every X, like right now, Brian's got this current Kickstarter happening, Crawling Death Below.
Gamefound.
On Gamefound, there it is again. But I guarantee you, mark my words, like, what is this, April? We're in April? I guarantee you by the end of summer, Brian's going to push another product. And then...
Oh, gosh, yeah.
And then by spring, he'll have another product. Oh, I totally forgot to talk about the dice you did. He did these amazing, potent... What you had
Polydice potions?
Polydice potion. I didn't want to give the wrong name.
Yeah.
You talk about them. I'm going to find them.
So basically, like, I make things that I want to have, or that my kids want to have, and I just keep making stuff, which is why I have the RPG Squeeze, both blind box squishies, like slow rise foam squishies of classic RPG monsters, or the RPG Squeeze plush toys. Or then I did Polydice potions, which are they're basically they're named after spells in everyone's favorite RPG.
This one's Fireball.
And yep,
my camera's.
And I wanted to make dice because I had never made dice before. So
and this one
I did that.
Acid Splash. It's just like potions in a bottle, but that's all the dice.
Yeah, that's perfect.
And made little cardboard like game board potion holder so that they can just be
I didn't put that together yet, unfortunately.
Yeah, use super glue when you do. But
I will.
So I dabble in a little bit of everything, because when you make big sculptures that are one of a kind that can be up like over $1,000, you have to have smaller things that people that want to support you at a convention are willing to pay for, like a $12 pin.
Right.
And all those little things add up and help pay for the booth and pay for the hotel and pay some of your bills and all that stuff. So I keep making additional products that are in the same family that can all fall under my creature curation umbrella company.
Everything you're making just syncs perfectly well with everything else. And your pin prices are too low. I'm going to throw that out there while we're at it.
That's okay.
So the other thing I had on my list here was, I wanted to pick some stuff that Briana can talk about with me too, because you weren't at Gary Con with us, obviously. Was Dungeons and Dragons, which is something we all enjoy, and I actually feel like Briana plays a lot more D&D than both of us combined.
I don't play any right now.
Right, and
that's sad.
I mean, sometimes you just don't have the time.
I'm playing a lot of games though, so it's okay.
Yeah, Brian's got he's doing a lot. He's playing a lot of games. He's got a lot of interviews happening. He's a busy guy.
Yep. He's a busy man. Got it.
So I'm gonna start by basically, I was gonna ask, we had, when was when I had Scott on, I think it's an interesting question. Is what's the first time you played D&D and what version? Because I think it's interesting to hear what got people into the game.
So who do you want to answer first?
That's to Briana, by the way. I'm sorry.
Excellent.
Okay.
We'll start with her.
Yeah. I think the first time I played 5e first. Before that, I'd played RPGs as a kid when I was like 12 or 13, but that was GURPS, which is like
you mentioned
antiquated.
That to me.
Yeah.
Yep.
You told me she told me about looking into, because you and I were talking about different rule sets, and you mentioned that to me, and I looked into it. It's super old.
Yeah.
No.
It's all D6s.
No.
It's all D6s. But
takes forever to build a character.
Yeah, I actually found my old character sheet, and I remember it being like so straightforward and easy, and like I don't know what anything was on there. Like I don't remember how to like do any of it. But that was my first like foray into tabletop stuff. And then I feel like right around the time that Critical Role came out, which is maybe 2014, 2015, I can't remember.
Yeah, I'm trying to remember when Vox Machina came out.
They just had a 7-year anniversary, so.
Oh, okay.
2015? right?
Yeah. So right around there, my husband actually found it, and he had known that I'd played tabletop RPGs, and he was like, "This actually looks like a lot of fun. Like, do you want to do this with me?" And I was like, "Hell yes, I do." So we got back into it, but it was for 5e. So I've only played 5e, and then other tabletop like things as a kid.
Awesome.
Yeah.
I mean,
It's so
you named
wonderful to see
your first
how-
system is such a random system that it's like a name. Like when she said it, I had to have her spell it because I was like, I've never even heard of this.
Yeah.
That's funny. It's awesome to see how many people Critical Role has brought into the hobby. They've really
it's like
done amazing things with that.
I mean, the first time I can't remember who told me about Critical Role for the first time, but like I still remember like hearing about it, thinking it's a weird idea. Like, why would I want to watch people play? Like, it's so like such a random thing. But yeah, it did make me. I watched. I actually started with season 2 because by the time I got into Critical Role, season 2 was already moving. Oh, it was Elaine. Elaine told me to watch it.
Yeah.
And she was like, watch season 2, and then if you really want, go back and watch season 1, which is what I ended up doing. But it was like it made me want to play D&D again, and I pulled out. I had 3rd edition books, or I think it's 3 or 3.5, but I was like, this is a lot, and I don't know how to manage this. And then I can't remember who told me. Somebody was like, get 5e, man. It's designed for you to learn fast. It's super simple to a degree. And I was just like, okay. And I bought up all the 5e books, basically. I started with the Dungeon Master's Guide, Player's Handbook, and as just pacing through it, I was like, this is great. But then I couldn't get people to play, which is its own problem, right?
The kicker, yeah. That's usually
luckily I shouldn't say that. But the pandemic hit, and I didn't mean to say luckily. I just meant to say it gave me an excuse to.
I just meant to say luckily.
Luckily, I was able to. I had this pandemic happen, so I can get people to play D&D with me. But I remember my friends were like, my friends and I used to do a board game night every 2 to 3 weeks where we hang out and play games live in another friend's house, or we pick a random house every time, and we couldn't do that with the pandemic. So then we were like, what's something we can play online? And I was like, I got this game. Like, you don't have to leave your home. All you need is this. It's a video call.
All you need is your imagination and some dice.
Which is actually easier said than done, right? Because when I'm sure you guys have seen this in the games. Like, there's always like some players who don't want to. You don't have to go all in, which is fine. Some people think they have to show up and do a voice. You don't have to do a voice. Just have a good time. I struggle bus in our campaign with sometimes I want to throw a voice in there. Sometimes I'm like, nah. Yep. These guys always want me to play my guitar. I'm like, no.
But as the GMs,
we're gonna keep trying to get you to.
Sometimes
Instead you play guitar, you're playing a bard in the campampain. Like,
I know I'm a bard. I refuse to play my guitar live. I'm like, but at the end of the day, I'm just playing with my 5 friends. I'm like, it's not that hard. But also, my point is, you should have fun playing it. Otherwise, it's like in my campaign, I have 4 players. I had 5, and one guy, it just wasn't his thing, which is understandable. Like, I'm not going to force you to play if you don't want to play, because that's no fun for me, and it's definitely no fun for you, right?
Right.
And I'm not going to build a campaign around you just to make you feel better. So, but the other 4 stuck around.
Yeah, you want everybody having fun at the table. If somebody's not having fun, either you need to find ways to engage with them better, or maybe it's just not for them.
Right. And I find that I haven't run. I've only run this. I've run this one by myself, and then I'm in one with Briana, which I think is kind of fun because it's all artists. So we all have we definitely have imaginations. So we'd be totally fucked if we didn't.
Not Ben.
Not Ben.
Ben has aphantasia, so he can't imagine. Well, we have one artist in our group that can't. He doesn't have a visual imagination, which is
he needs to see everything on the map. I remember, every time there's something, he's like, "Where am I? What's going on?" Well, Ben, get your shit together, Ben. But I think I think it's one of those games where I feel like if you can just enjoy yourself, it's a good time, and it's fun. I think it's a little bit challenging, which because you have to I'm writing this campaign right now where I play with 4 software engineers who anything I throw at them, they can figure out pretty quick. It's like, I can't even play a riddle me this game with them because they'll figure it out and they'll figure out a way out of it right away. So I've been trying to build like this challenging level for them, which we'll see. I think I've talked to Briana about this once or twice because I'm like, I really want to I don't want to kill them, but I want them to feel like, wow, that took us a minute and that was fun.
Right. And feeling like there's an actual threat in there is important, especially with people, like sometimes I've played with people that I think are probably similar to your friends. If they're engineers, most likely they know what the creatures can do. They've read the books. They know what the best way to approach a specific situation, even if perhaps their character might not.
Right.
So one of the things with that's I find important when I run games, if you're playing an existing rule set, is to change up what those creatures are, especially if the characters have not encountered them before.
Okay.
Because you have to break them out of the meta, like the information that they know as a player versus what their character knows. So even like, okay, they may think a kobold can do this,
right?
But what if it can actually do this? And just because they've heard stories, they were told tales as a child about these creatures, but they've never actually personally interacted with one. Changing it up, it makes it more exciting for the players because even though they may be wrong, they may be like, no, you're wrong as the GM. It's be like, no, this is how they are in this world.
That's a smart play. I mean, I threw a Drider in on their campaign last time. They just got to level 5, by the way. So, I took them through all the Lost Mines of Phandelver, which should have been done in 2 months. It took me a year and a half, I think, because that's how paced it was, right? And I changed a lot of it up as they were moving along. I purposely was I need to make this a little more challenging so they don't just rinse through it. When they got to that last room, I switched up the whole room. I threw in a doppelganger that tried to stab a dude. I threw in a Drider that the one guy in the group was like, holy crap, this thing's super strong. We're not going to beat it. We're all going to die in here. I'm like, relax, bro. Just play the game.
Sometimes, coming close to death is good. It makes you...
They got close.
It makes you decide, sometimes I don't need to fight everything. Sometimes I need to turn tail and run.
Oh, yeah. So you said this to me last week when we were talking about this. I trapped him in the room. So
yeah, I forgot about that.
I didn't, you know what? They triggered every trap I put in there. I'm like, I don't understand why you guys aren't checking for traps. You're in a dungeon.
Well, they'll check next time.
Correct.
Yeah.
Right?
In one of my games, we had a character who would kick every door. He was playing a dwarf. And he would just hammer through every door. He would just axe through everything. And it kept setting off traps. And at one point, the entire room caved in on him and he almost died. And suddenly he was a much more cautious dwarf. So,
yeah,
eventually you adapt.
I'm hoping that's what they do because that last trap they set off dropped the ceiling on them all,
Yeah.
I was like, I can't believe you didn't check for traps on that. They haven't even gone, the thing they stole is the best part. So I haven't even told them, about the thing they stole. So I'm waiting for the next round where we play. But, I'm having a good time. It's a little more, like I said, I'm learning to adjust to the different types of players, right? I feel like artists are a different breed. We are thirsty for the games, right? To a degree. So it's we're ready to rock and roll and have fun. In our campaign, Bree, we were on a boat for a whole campaign, right, fighting off things, and I was like, we never left the boat, and it was still fun for me. We finished, and I was like, I had a really great time playing that. Versus in my campaign, I'm moving these guys through a dungeon, and there's a point where I'm like, it's funny because the paladin realized he was in the room for this weapon he needed, but they were on the other side of the map. He's like, we have to go back, and everybody was just like, what? And of course, I threw everything at them again, right? And they're like, all these enemies are here again. I'm like, yeah, man. You think...
Did they respawn in a video game?
Well, it's just you're backtracking. You've made so much noise, they know you're here,
Okay.
And as a DM, I made some mistakes. I shouldn't have let him take a rest in one room. I made a mistake with the doppelganger, which I could have played that out a little more. But I made these mental notes, things I should not... I think it was you, Brian. I was talking to you and I said, I did this. And you're like, and that's how you learn to be a better DM. You make the mistakes so you can keep
Sure. Yeah. And also be willing to be flexible on always be flexible on whatever you come up with for the adventure, because players will never go the direction you expect them to go.
They never do.
And especially
what you want to do.
especially like GaryCon, I put myself, like, when running games for people you don't know at all, you never know what type of player they're going to be, which is like, I had a very different group from Friday to Saturday and the type of players and what they wanted out of an adventure. And being able to kind of read the room and get an idea of what those players enjoy is important, so that they have the best experience that they can. Because more than anything, whoever's running the game, their job is to make sure everybody has a good time.
Yeah, totally. And like, yeah, even in our campaign, our DM is Claire, and she's more than once said, yeah, you guys went a completely different way than I thought. Even the last one, she messaged me later to be like, I thought you were going to do X and you did Y. And I was like, damn it, that's what I wanted to do. And like, she knew exactly what I wanted to do as a friend and as a player. Like, she knew what I wanted to do, and I didn't do it. And if you want to know what it was, Briana, it was, we put a hole in that door, and I was going to cannonball through the door and start just hacking and slashing whatever was on the other side. But then I think Anna said, let's just negotiate and talk to them. And that's not what she thought we were going to do. Like, she thought I was going to jump through the door and Anna would just follow me, because we're both halflings, so we could have squeezed through that hole. Like, and then you guys would just follow through. But instead, we were throwing fucking magic missiles in there and shit. It was like, just go through the door. Like, as a DM, you can't be like, just go through the door. We really analyzed the shit out of that door, which is funny to me.
I mean, that happens,
Yeah.
And I think there's always like growing pains and like an adjustment period. I feel like we haven't, as a group, been playing long enough for all of us to kind of anticipate each other's play styles. And everybody has in every game that you play, they'll have a different sort of play style and preference for how they like to play. Like, some people will be very antagonistic and just want to like trigger every chap because it's exciting, and other people will really want to role play. And so kind of learning that about each other and settling in, I think future events will go smoother.
I think, also, real quick on anyone watching, feel free to ask questions, man. It's not just us. But I think I talk to Claire usually after every session, just to be like, I feel like we're growing and getting better at figuring out what each of us wants, which is what you want, right? From a ongoing campaign. Like, if it's a one shot, it's a different story. But I see that in my other group. I feel like, I'm not going to call them out by name, but 3 of them are getting it. One of them is totally just not with it yet. I'm waiting for that individual to just sync up and be like, let's go. Like, it's gonna be very exciting when they decide to do stuff that I'm hoping they do eventually. But
you might be able to kind of trigger it if like you said at this point you've been playing with them for a little while. You might, if you can kind of anticipate what they're gonna do and how they're gonna react to situations, you can maybe like.
The thing is, it's like
little push.
I've been trying to give some of them. So 2 of them gave me their backstories, so I've been able to write these 2 adventures based on their backstories to kind of
that's cool.
Move them that way. And then 2 of them haven't yet. I'm trying to get on them, but one of them, I've talked about this guy all the time because he makes me laugh. He's a druid. He just refused to wild shape on me, and I'm just like, cool, man. Let's write a backstory for that. Like, it'd be cooler if your friends have a reason for you not to, because like, I dropped that ceiling on them and he refused to wild shape to save his own ass, so he was like knocked out by a ceiling, and I'm just like, oh, you could have turned it. It was like, funny because they were like, turn into a shark, like they were trying to get him to turn into all these things that would give him extra, because you get extra hit points when you become a big creature. And he was one of the healers in the group, so like, you need to survive this, and he literally went, nah. And I'm just like, awesome. I could not stop laughing because I was just like, oh, he's knocked out. Like, he took a lot of hits. He took a ceiling on top of his head. Like, I don't know what to tell you guys. I'm like, have a private conversation later with him, But I messaged him to be like, hey, can you give me a backstory? Because, did you wild shape and kill your whole family? Or did you wild shape and you walk around a village naked? Like, which is super embarrassing, We can make it funny,
Yep.
Like, maybe you wild shape half and
that's
half.
That's really dependent on the player, because a lot of players don't necessarily want all that backstory, but other people thrive on it. So,
I mean, he's wild shaped I was trying to remember if he ever did it. He has once turned into a rat, I remember, or a ferret to like investigate a room. I think it was a rat. So he has done it, but he's never done anything big. Like I feel like if I was a druid, I'd want to be a bear or something, right? Like,
yeah, you could incentivize it, like do something that he could only do in certain
trust me,
forms.
I'm writing something.
Right.
I'm writing something specifically to push him in a specific direction, but I want his backstory first because I want to like. I don't want to force my players to do something just because I'm like, why won't you do this thing? But I'd rather like work it into the story and be like, here's this cool thing that we can work in your story. You want me to like do it, right? Like that's one of the things I like about our DM Claire, because she'll like message us privately to be like, hey, tell me where you want to take your story, and I'll try to. Like she is trying to work with each one of us to work our story into, and I think that's cool because that makes it more fun for us too, right? Like because I got a cool idea for my character, which if I can pull it off, will be fun. I'm a guy that stabs everybody, and I keep. We mentioned Ben. Ben consistently stops my kills. It's like, can you not? Can you just let me stab this guy once?
Pure chaos.
But let me get back to Brian for a minute because he's our guest, and I want to talk about Crawling Death Below the Dying Forest. Which,
yes,
if I wanted to talk a little bit more about it because I remember this is a game you worked on with your kids, correct?
So to a degree, yes. So I had the idea that I wanted to do a Merkborg adventure. Anybody that's not familiar, look it up. Morkborg.
So it's Merkborg, right? We found out we were both saying it wrong the whole time.
There's all sorts of different ways that people say it. Sometimes I'll say Morkborg, but then like you hear like Johan or Pele say it, and it's so fast and short because
they say it like one word.
Right. It essentially translates to Dark Fort. In I believe it's Swedish. I'm terrible with getting all that stuff straight, but
let's go with Swedish.
I knew that I wanted to create like a self-contained adventure because I co-created Vastgrim, and that's like a complete hack where all you need is that book and you can do it. So I wanted to make something specifically for Merkborg. So I had created cartography years ago that was co-published by Norse Foundry, and I had my kids sitting around with me, and I said, I want to create an adventure. I want to use one of the decks of cards, which is like a dungeon in a deck. There's 52 cards. There's a bunch of different rooms. You can lay it out as one giant mega dungeon, or you can do them like one at a time. So I sat down with them and I said, we need adventure hooks for the game. It's got to be set in the Merkborg universe. And I already had some seeds that I kind of helped feed them to pull things out of them. And I was like, okay, let's work on what the concepts are. And we have 4 adventure hooks that are in there. Okay, now we need to come up with some factions of different groups that could be in this giant mega dungeon that's below this dying forest. So they helped come up with some of the factions and some of the NPCs. And then I started breaking out the card deck, and I'd like lay down a card. I'm like, okay, what do you think should be in here? And then I'd make notes, and then I do another card. What do you think should be in here? And so I took their input on those and some of the traps and some of the relics or magic items, and kind of took their input, and then I wrote it out in a full 48-page book. So you can use the card deck if you want to randomly generate a dungeon, or I also have a dice mechanic in the book where you can roll it, and then inside the book itself there are pages where it shows you like, okay, this is what's on and this is what's in this room, and then it has the information with it. So if you roll 54 or whatever, that's the room that you go to next.
You find card 54 or
room 54. So like you don't need the cards to do it. You could just do it theater of the mind. You could draw it out on a big like map on your table playing with friends. Or I'm even doing a Roll20 adaptation of it, so you could do it that way. So and you could do it as one big major story, or if you're doing one of the adventure hooks, I have specific rooms keyed out. Like you at least need to include these 6 rooms, but you can add more in to make sure that you're following this one storyline that's in there. So there's a lot of replayability with it being randomly generated. And there's also a reason for the dungeon being ever shifting, because it's like the ground underneath. There's this moving deity that's underground that is being fed people to help it grow and try and escape this magical bond that it has. Like it's bound under there. So there's a reason for the dungeon to move and shift and change. So you could play it today and it could be completely different tomorrow.
That's awesome.
That's
Nice.
cool. And you could I feel like you could still work that into Vast Grimm as well if you wanted to.
So I have we've unlocked a stretch goal where there is a bonus Vast Grimm adventure. Okay. So in one of the rooms in the dungeon, there's a crack, and it's actually a new alien species in Vast Grimm has been coming into the tunnels here and feeding this god. So nice. You can go in between the two universes. So if you're used to playing Merkborg and want to go and explore Vast Grimm for the first time, there's a bonus adventure. Or if you're playing Vast Grimm already and you want to play this game, you can come in through the side adventure.
That's awesome.
Thanks.
Looking through my notes really quick to make sure I didn't miss anything.
Sure. While you're looking there, it's live now on Gamefound for another 7 days. There's the link in the thing here on YouTube.
The link's on YouTube and on Twitch. And I will drop it in the bottom of this video when we're done and it's live.
The hardcover book is only $20. There's also VTT packs, a Roll20 edition. There's the Into the Asteroid, which is the Vast Grimm crossover that's available as a printed zine as well as an add-on.
I think also I figured out why. I think the Discover card issue I was telling about is my card was stolen.
Yeah, so, that would be why it wouldn't work.
I think that's why it didn't work, so I'll try it again with a new card. Yeah, Brian, excellent. I was trying to help Brian fund it, and I was like, my Discover card won't go through, which is weird, because it's Discover, and it should be used. It should be fine.
So another reason that I use Gamefound, because it's in beta, is a lot of people, in the industry, you want to have multiple options to be able to sell and get your work in front of other people. And Kickstarter has been the hugest player in the crowdfunding scene. So having other options available is always a good thing, because one, if there's other people out there, it makes Kickstarter strive to do better, to have better tools available, because there's competition. So the idea of being on another platform to help, just keep things moving is always good.
I mean, the thing I like about Gamefound is it's very specific to what it's offering, right? Mm-hmm. It's not like, I like Kickstarter, don't get me wrong, to a degree. I hate Kickstarter too. But I like that the thing with Kickstarter is it's got everything, right? Like you could be making a movie, you could make a book or an album, you could be making a food processor, it could be so many random things. But I know food processors are a random take, but they've had coolers on there, food processors on there, 3D printers. But you can make golf clubs. I'm sure if I type in golf clubs, there's a golf club on Kickstarter. Yep. But Gamefound is very specific to RPGs, and do they do board games? I don't remember.
It's board game specific. RPGs are new to it.
So I think that's cool.
Yeah,
because you're gonna go.
But there's also benefits.
Sure, go ahead.
Sorry.
I'm sorry, I don't mean to cut you off. Go ahead.
Yeah. There's also benefits to Kickstarter, because with all the audience for other stuff, they may discover a board game or RPG.
Kickstarter's got a bigger following. I get it.
Right.
But I feel like Gamefound is only 4 years old?
4 years old, but only 6 months to 8 months old in the crowdfunding space.
Right. So I feel like eventually they will become as popular as Kickstarter, as far as people always go Kickstarter because there's a higher percentage that your stuff's gonna get found out there right away. So yeah, maybe your current project would have funded more on Kickstarter versus Gamefound, but you're coming in as one of the pioneers now. It'll be the second thing for you on there, and you fund it.
Yep.
So good job on that. Congrats.
Thank you.
And if you stick with them, I'm sure they'll keep supporting your stuff.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And it opens up the doors for other people. But
it's also,
if they see.
Yeah, I mean, you got me thinking, right? When I do a RPG, at some point, would I do Gamefound or would I do Kickstarter? My initial instincts tell me go to Kickstarter, where everybody knows you. Mm-hmm. But then part of me is try Gamefound. You can get popular on there too.
Yep.
I
don't know. Depends on where things are at that point. Yeah.
Yeah, we'll see where things are, where I'm at in a year. So I might be I fucking hate RPGs.
Yep.
I lost my train of thought. But I think that's, I'm trying to think. I don't have any other questions for you. So, Briana, if you got something, feel free to throw them out there.
I mean, I'm just looking through it and I'm really enjoying the art. And I also kind of wanted to talk or ask you about your process in doing it with your kids, and like if they were really hyped to get to be a part of something that you created, and or do they not realize how cool that is?
They do and they don't. So one is 12 and one is 8. And this isn't like their first time in it. So like my World of Revlo that I created is my son's middle name backwards is Oliver backwards. And so like I've pulled in like I used to make him sit down and draw and be like, okay, draw me a creature so I can sculpt it. So like there's things like that I've forced them to do. And I think as they get older, I think they'll enjoy it more. But like they play Vast Grim with me regularly. Like I have a game with my daughter, my son, my nephew, and another kid that we play online, and they're like playing goofy, weird sci-fi stuff. So like trying to get them into it and hopefully they enjoy it to a point that they want to keep doing it as they get older. And you know, I mean, inside the Crawling Death book, like I only have the printed sample that I just got done, but it's got created by, and I've got both of my kids' names in there, so they have like published credits at 12 and 8 years old, which I think is
amazing.
Whether they see it now or they see it 10 years from now, you know, hopefully it'll sink in and they'll be like, wow, okay.
I think it'll sink in. I feel like your kids are really into. He's doing a good job of making them play board games and play RPGs and stuff. So I think they're like really into. Like my kid, it's too young to figure it out with her.
Yeah, she's 3. So
she's 3. She don't know any better, but she might. Yeah. You know, she likes to play. I mean, now I play Candyland with her, and I forget the other game. It's like she likes some kid board games, so I feel like she's got the wanting, but RPGs is a whole different bag of. Yeah. You know, you got to be like, hey man, you got to sit still. You got to use your imagination. It's a little bit of patience,
right?
Because kids don't like sitting still that long. So kudos to you.
Yeah. Thanks
for getting them to play. Hopefully, they don't hate you.
I'm sure
they're like the Jackson 5, but just not quite the Jackson 5. You know, Brian's like, play that RPG.
Kind of money.
Roll that dice. Draw me a creature.
Having them sit down and be like, okay, we need to get through this many rooms today. It's Saturday. We need to get through this many rooms because I'm got these own deadlines in my head because I want to make this happen.
And you do that to them on a Saturday? What's wrong with you? You're cruel. I'm just kidding.
I got to make it happen.
Days don't exist for me, man. Saturday is just another day. Everyone's like, it's the weekend. Let's have fun. I'm like, it's just a Saturday. Briana don't know our pain.
I don't have kids.
Yeah. So she's like, my Saturdays are at the beach. See you guys later.
Nice.
I'm just kidding. I don't know what you do on a Saturday. Let me think. Did I miss any of your products? Oh, I don't think so. You'll be at so I'm assuming you're going to be at the this will be done in 2 weeks, right? It's on for 2 more weeks.
This will be done in 1 week. It's done a week from tonight. Yep.
Are you planning on having this? You're obviously going to have Vast Grim hopefully at Gen Con and Origins.
Yes, I will have both of them at Gen Con.
You'll have both of them at Gen Con. Okay.
Yeah, I'm going to print this in the US, so it'll turn around quickly. So I'm hoping to have this, like, I mean, the book's laid out completely. It's gone through editing twice by Walton Wood, who's done a lot of editing for Merkborg and a bunch of other things. So I'm hoping that once the funds come through 2 weeks after it being done, I will already have sent it off to the printer and just be ready to wrap it up quick.
That's another smart thing Brian just said, which I learned the hard way when I did my book, which was have all the stuff ready. And, you know, in my head, I had my book at like 90% ready. Threw it up on Kickstarter. By the way, Brian helped me with that Kickstarter. He did a lot of design work on that for me. Because I was like, can we get this done in a week? And he's like, I got you. And we did it.
Yep.
And it funded.
That's amazing. That's amazing.
Oh, yeah. Because like everybody was like, Kickstart your book. And I'm like, it's a pandemic. This thing's not going to work. And it did. But like I had to like, before I even considered it, I messaged Brian and said, is there any chance you can help me create some graphics for this thing? If I say I'm going to go, can you help me with the graphics? And he did. And he got a lot of stuff done. Like we did it in like a week, I think. We got a lot of like, maybe 2 weeks.
I can design like in my sleep, you know, it's just like,
we just like click it out, you know, like.
Man, what can't Brian do? I'm just so many things.
I do a lot.
Brian can't sleep. He definitely, Brian cannot have shrimp for breakfast.
Okay, fair. Yeah.
Nope. That's a story we will not tell live. He can handle his liquor, I guess.
Yep.
What can't Brian do? That is a good question.
I have a terrible memory. That's
not true.
Yeah. But yeah, I do a little bit of everything.
That's
I've been
awesome.
doing print design since '97, so I've got a good handle on design and layout of website design because I did that for a number of years, and sculpt and do all the other stuff. Manufacturing.
Yeah, I forgot about the web design stuff. That is another way Brian and I connect. Brian and I both were web designers before we decided to shift to illustration work primarily.
Mm-hmm.
You still dabble in it. I do not miss coding at all. Like when I was doing WordPress stuff for Ron, I would message Brian and be like, "You want to do this? Because I definitely don't want to touch this."
It's like, I don't know how to do this. Tell me how to do this.
Yeah, I was like, I don't remember this. I haven't touched. At that point, I hadn't touched it in like 4 years. And the code
just another puzzle to figure out.
I don't want to solve that puzzle. But I can't remember anything else right now. I'm tired.
Yeah. But, if you want to see all of my stuff, you can go to Linktree/Brian Colin. That has all the.
You can drop the link
links.
in the. If you want to send it to me here real quick, I'll put it in the chat. I'll definitely put it at the bottom of the YouTube channel. But yeah, Briana, if you have any other questions, otherwise, I appreciate you guest hosting tonight.
Yeah, no, thanks for having me.
I know you're like packing up and you're in the middle of a move.
I am. Yeah, I had to push all the moving boxes out of this room before the.
I mean, that looks like a really clean room.
Looks like
I didn't clean
dump.
shit up, man. There's literally a pillow there that I don't even know whose pillow that is, but there it is. So
nice,
violet sized. So maybe.
Yeah, it tells me my kid's been in here. So, but why is she sitting there? Like, there's a chair right here.
Like, cozy.
Yep,
Nice and low to the ground.
What you guys can't see is there's a crazy mess right here.
Oh, I know. I was just there. Like
Brian was there. He saw it. I cleaned my house as best I could. I'm like, you have to do one. I'm like, you ain't important. I ain't cleaning this room. So, but yeah, I was gonna mention when you said you were moving. I saw this thing the other day on, I think it was Twitter, about like how like costs all over. It had a list of like costs for every state. So it's like people can't even like move. I don't want to get too deep into this, but people can't even like move to like in Chicago, even the rent's gone up, right? But you can't be like, I'm gonna move to Virginia because it'd be cheaper. It's not. You can't move to like any place else. Everyone's until somebody handles it. Fuck politics. That's why I don't want to talk about politics.
Yeah.
Well, I think we hit all the questions. If I didn't ask you something you want to talk about, Brian, feel free to mention it. When am I going to get a Bass Grim hat? That's what I want to talk about right now. I worked on it with you. Where's my hat?
Well, I only had 3 made because they were just
you, David,
testers.
Me.
So, no, me, David, and Ross.
Oh,
Ross wrote 25% of it. Did 25% of layout, did some art for it. So he had to get it. Ooh, I do have some samples of the book covers coming. I just got an announcement today that the Baskrim, the holographic Gamefound exclusive cover and the original cover are getting shipped to me.
I got the holographic one, I believe.
Yes, and that's on the holographic paper. So, like, you've seen the dice boxes, the grimoires, and that kind of.
You got one with you right now? You should show the dice box, man. It's cool.
Yeah.
So it's kind of like, he's got a cool case for it. It's got this cool design on it, and the dice and the box are like, it's got that like cyberpunk neo cyberpunk feel. Yeah.
So it's printed on holographic paper.
That's
so it's
awesome.
got all sorts of shine to it, and then on the inside, because with Merkborg, there are these prophecies. You roll at the beginning of each day in the campaign to see how much closer it is to the end of the world. And same thing with Vast Grimm, you roll to see how much closer it is to the end of the universe. So it's all kind of weird, almost like biblical type, like how it's written. So we added additional prophecy type scripture on the inside as well. I'm just holding my hand here so the dice don't fall out all over my computer. Like that.
There goes. But yeah, so that's one of the concepts. That's what I was saying earlier, how like people can play it very like you kick this friend out of the airlock, basically, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like, because in our campaign that we played that day, we did the roll for that, and we only had 1 day left. So when you're like, we only have 1 day left to live, you're gonna be you can choose to either be nice and figure stuff out, or you can be as chaotic as possible, because you're like, I'll be dead in 24 hours, technically.
Yep.
I think the one I played with you before that, we had like 4 days. So everybody was kind of like playing it safe to a certain degree.
Well, so So you have 4 torments left. So that doesn't necessarily mean there's 4 days. It's like it has to be rolled like if you're playing a long campaign, you'd roll a d20, and if you get a 1, then a torment occurs.
Right.
And then once a torment occurs, you don't roll that d20 anymore. You move on to a d12. So you can have a campaign that goes on for a long period of time. But if you're playing like a one-shot at a convention, everybody's like, I want it to be close to the end. I want 6 torments to have already occurred. I want this to happen because I want to see the universe just come to this cataclysmic end.
I mean, I feel like there was a torment rolled in our last 30 minutes of our Mothership game. I was like, done. Brian saw me. So when we played Mothership, it's not that, it's a DM was being very thorough explaining the rules of Mothership to us. So it's not really his fault. But I was tired and I was done. And I kept folding up my rules in my paper and putting it away. And then he'd be like, here's some XP points you guys get. So I pulled it back out, wrote it down, folded it up, put it away. And he's like, here's this other thing. I pulled it back out. I just kept looking at Brian like, I swear to God.
And I was like, I'm never effing playing this game again. Why do I need some XP?
Like, that told me, right? You were being nicer about it than me, but I was just like, I never want to play this game again. And it totally sealed the deal on me ever using it for Ancient Ones. Like, I was like, not going to fucking build my system in this. Unless...
Well, I wanted to see it.
Yeah, I mean, both of us wanted to see it. We got a taste of it. And I think the only way I would reconsider it is if I played it with a DM that maybe showed me something different. Like...
Sure.
Or if there was a way to work... Like, I don't see a way of working that in with the... I like dice. I want to roll the... I like the randomness of dice in my game. So that's why 5e just... I understand 5e is like... what was the word you were using last week? It's like oversaturated, right? Crunchier is a good word too, but it's also oversaturated. Like, all these people keep making 5e games, 5e games, 5e games.
Yep.
There was a good article. I can't remember what it was now. Somebody talked about why, like, that's just the way to do it. But all these new systems, because like Mothership made them 1.5 million or something. So we were like, why?
Yeah.
What's so
and
different?
They have an open license.
I think it's just good marketing, which is also key.
I think they also were on Roll20 at the beginning of the pandemic, when a lot of people that were playing 5e also now had a lot more time to maybe try out something different. So building an audience over since its launch over 3 years is huge.
What if we did it in 2nd edition and try to spin it? I'm just kidding.
So Old School Essentials is essentially kind of like, it's kind of the late 70s, early 80s D&D stuff. So and they have a license where you can write stuff for OSE.
I have no interest in.
And they just had a $700,000 Kickstarter that just closed out almost.
Really?
Old School Essentials reprint, yeah.
Interesting.
By Exalted Funeral and...
I mean, like, I sat in that... Games. I watched that guy... I didn't sit in that game. I watched that guy play what you were running your campaign that Saturday. I watched it for like 20 minutes, and it was just like off the wall to me. I was just like, this is like completely... and then, like I said, then the guy insulted me because I said I played 5e, and then I walked away.
Oh.
Yeah.
I wanted to flip the table and walk away, but I was just like, let's just walk away.
But there's tons of other like indie RPG games that are coming out all the time now, because like I would just go and watch a bunch of videos on +1 EXP and see things that Tony's helping get the word out on, because there's a lot of really good stuff out there that may be different genre, mechanics,
well, like
all that
stuff. I showed you, when you were here, I showed you there's a board game called Root. What is it?
Mm-hmm. Right. There's an RPG.
So there's an RPG for that, and it's actually a really good RPG. I was trying to figure out where I put my book, but it's.
You got the free comic book or free RPG Day one, right?
Oh no, that wasn't free. I had to buy that. I bought that, but the Root RPG is very like basic, and it's like friendly forest creatures, but it's fun to play. And then the Hellboy one came in, and they have their own. Like, I cannot tell what they built it on. It feels very much like they designed their own set of rules, which to a degree I think is a cool idea. But the only reason I was thinking 5e for Ancient Ones is because 2 parts. One part was if somebody wanted to bring my world into a campaign, they could. And 2, it's something a lot of people are familiar with, so the learning curve would be smaller and less stressful. Is the way I'm looking. Because I want you to sit down and play the game, just go at it without...
Yeah, just have fun.
Yeah, so...
Oh, and I mean, like, even Paizo just, I believe, announced yesterday that they're going to be launching some of the Pathfinder storylines as 5e content. which I mean, that's like it just shows how many people are playing 5e if you're taking existing storylines from Pathfinder 1 and launching them in 5e just to reach out to a bigger audience.
People are interested in it. I've never played Pathfinder.
Yep. It's 3.5. Well, I don't know 2e because I haven't played Pathfinder 2e, but it was all based off 3.5 D&D.
Never played Pathfinder. All right, well, we're about 15 minutes over time, which is fine. It happens. It's fine. So anything else you guys want to talk about before I call it? Otherwise, thanks for being on, Brian. Thanks for
having me.
Guest hosting, Briana. I'm going to post Crawling Death Below the Dying Forest. I have to keep looking at my notes. Keeping in mind this copy of the book Brian keeps showing as a test copy is not the actual.
Yes, it's not the final. It's going to be a little bit different in size.
Yeah, and the pages will open better and all that cool stuff. Yeah. But I think I saw this at the show. I think it looked good.
It looks awesome.
I also, on a quick side note, like the fact that you stuck with that, like, Morkborg yellow.
Well, I mean, it's for that game, so it has to feel like it fits into that library.
And they have a huge following, so I think that's going to help a ton, too.
So they have a community base, and they've had over 1,000 things published by other people, whether it's just digital or whatnot. But if you look at, like, the Ex Libris Morkborg website, it's all cataloged there, where people that have created classes, monsters, adventures. And Ex Libris is doing an Ex Libris Fast Grim. So that will be launching hopefully before too long for people that are creating third-party content for my setting. Which is I
was part of the Discord with you for a while, and I had to leave the Discord because it was like, it's busy. It's a busy Discord. Like, there's so much chatter in the Morkborg Discord. I mean, it's all good stuff, but I just I could not keep up with it. I need to.
Yeah, I can't participate like I should.
You can get a cool thumbs up skeleton hand though for.
Yeah, you can.
Emojis. All right. Thanks for anyone who's watching. If you got one last chance to ask questions if you want. Otherwise, I am taking us offline. Oh, they left when I said that.
Goodbye, everybody.
I saw like 3 people leave right as I said that. Real quick, our next guest is, let me look at the calendar real quick before I call this a day. What is today, the 1st?
Today is the 1st.
Oh, okay. Our next guest is Corey Godby, and he'll be on the 15th, which is also a Friday at 7 o'clock.
Excellent.
Because we got Easter and all that stuff to get through, and we'll see how Andrew feels by then. But all right, thanks guys. Give me a second. Take us offline.
Bye, everybody.
Okay?
No.